I never expected that a simple weekend camping trip would change the way I looked at myself, my best friend, and the feelings I had buried deep inside me. It was supposed to be about escaping the city, lighting a fire under the stars, and enjoying the quiet of the woods. But when my friend looked me in the eyes that night and asked me something I wasn't ready for, I froze. That question unlocked emotions I never knew I had the courage to feel, and it set off a chain of events that would forever alter our friendship. Stay with me until the very end of this story, because what happened between us around that campfire wasn't just about one question. It was about trust, vulnerability, and discovering something that neither of us could ignore. And if you've ever had a moment where your world tilted with just a few words, you'll understand why this night is burned into my memory. Don't forget to subscribe, because the story you're about to hear is only the beginning of an unforgettable journey. The night air in the woods was colder than I had expected. The fire we built crackled in front of us, sending orange sparks into the dark sky. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, watching the shadows of the trees dance with every gust of wind. It was the kind of silence that was both calming and unsettling, the kind that made you hyper-aware of the person sitting just a few feet away. That person was Ethan, my best friend since high school. We had done countless things together: road trips, late-night study sessions, even surviving college dorm life side by side. But camping was his thing, not mine. I was more of a city kid, used to glowing streetlights and the hum of cars. He, on the other hand, loved the simplicity of the outdoors. "The woods don't judge," he'd say with that easy grin of his. I watched him from across the fire as he leaned back against a log, his face half lit by the flames. His hair was messy from the wind, and his smile lingered even when he wasn't talking, as though he carried secrets he hadn't told me yet. That night, sitting there with just the two of us, I started noticing details I had ignored before. The way his voice dipped when he was serious, the roughness of his hands as he poked at the fire with a stick, the warmth in his laugh that seemed to settle deeper in me than I wanted to admit. I kept shaking those thoughts off. He was my best friend. That was it. But my chest felt heavy, as if I was holding something in. "You're awfully quiet tonight," Ethan said suddenly, snapping me out of my spiral. I shrugged, hoping my voice wouldn't betray me. "Just thinking." "About what?" he asked, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. The firelight caught his eyes, and for a second, it was hard to look away. "Life, I guess," I said, trying to sound casual. "Where it's all going. You know, deep thoughts around a campfire." He chuckled, but there was an edge to his smile. "You've been different lately. Like something's on your mind, and you won't let me in." My stomach tightened. He wasn't wrong. For months, I'd been avoiding these moments where it was just the two of us, no distractions. I was terrified he might see right through me. "I'm fine," I said quickly, maybe too quickly. He tilted his head. "You sure?" I nodded, though the lie sat heavy on my tongue. To change the subject, I picked up a marshmallow and shoved it onto a stick. "Want one?" He smirked. "Always." The silence that followed was easier, but only for a moment. As the marshmallows browned, Ethan shifted closer, his shoulder brushing against mine. I felt my pulse spike. It was such a small touch, accidental maybe, but it set my nerves on fire. "You ever think about how different life would be if we hadn't met?" he asked, his voice low. I forced a laugh. "What, like if we never sat next to each other in homeroom freshman year?" "Yeah." "Or if I hadn't asked you to be my roommate in college? Everything would be different." I glanced at him. His expression was unreadable, eyes fixed on the flames. "I don't know if I'd like that version of life," I admitted quietly. His eyes flicked to mine, and for a second I thought I saw something that made my breath hitch. But before I could place it, he looked away again. The fire popped loudly, filling the silence between us. My heart was still racing when Ethan finally spoke again, his tone more serious than I'd ever heard. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded slowly. He turned toward me, his face lit by the glow of the fire, and said, "Have you ever wondered if what we have is more than just friendship?" The words hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore. My mind went blank. All the thoughts I had buried, all the feelings I had shoved aside, came crashing into me at once. I froze. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. Ethan's eyes searched mine, waiting, and in that moment I knew this wasn't a joke or some passing thought. He meant it. He was giving me a choice: deny everything, or admit what had been building between us for years. But I couldn't answer. Not yet. So I just sat there, staring at him, unable to give him the truth that was burning inside me. He leaned back, breaking eye contact, and whispered, "Forget I asked." But I couldn't forget. Not then, not ever. The rest of the night was quiet. Too quiet. I lay in my sleeping bag, staring at the tent ceiling, replaying his words over and over. My chest ached with regret. I wanted to reach out, to tell him yes, I had wondered, yes, I felt it too. But fear held me back. When I finally drifted off to sleep, I knew nothing would be the same after tonight. And deep down, I knew the question he asked wasn't just going to disappear. It was only the beginning. The morning after Ethan's question was painfully awkward. I woke up to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of smoke lingering from the campfire we had let burn down to embers. For a moment, I thought maybe I had dreamt it all, that his words were just a creation of my restless mind. But when I rolled over in my sleeping bag and saw him sitting outside the tent, staring at the trees with a blank expression, I knew it had been real. I sat up slowly, rubbing my eyes, unsure how to act. My chest tightened, my throat dry. Should I pretend nothing happened? Should I say something? The weight of silence pressed down on me like a physical force. When I finally stepped outside, he glanced at me briefly and then back at the trees. "Morning," he said simply. His tone was neutral, careful. "Morning," I replied, my voice small. We busied ourselves with breakfast, instant coffee, granola bars, the kind of food that usually sparked jokes about how we weren't really outdoorsmen. But today, the jokes didn't come. Every word I wanted to say got stuck somewhere between my chest and my lips. Finally, as we were packing up the tent, Ethan broke the silence. "About last night?" My heart skipped. "You don't have to say anything," he continued quickly, almost too quickly. I shouldn't have asked. It was late, we were tired, and I was probably just overthinking. His dismissal stung more than I expected. I wanted to tell him he wasn't wrong, that I had been thinking the same thing for months, maybe even years. But the fear of ruining everything, the friendship that had anchored my life for so long, kept me frozen. We loaded the car in silence and started the drive back to the city. The hum of the road filled the air, but inside me, it felt like a storm was brewing. I kept stealing glances at him as he drove. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel harder than usual. He looked calm on the surface, but I knew him well enough to recognize the tension. Halfway through the drive, I couldn't take it anymore. "Ethan." He didn't look at me. "Yeah." I hesitated, my fingers fiddling with the hem of my hoodie. "What you asked last night, it wasn't crazy." He blinked, his grip on the wheel loosening just slightly. "It wasn't?" I shook my head. "I've thought about it too." My voice cracked at the end, the admission terrifying and liberating all at once. The car fell silent again, but this time, the air felt charged, alive. He finally looked at me, his eyes searching mine. And I swallowed hard. And I don't know what it means. I don't know what to do with it. But pretending like I haven't thought about it would be lying. His lips parted like he was about to say something, but then he pressed them together, his knuckles whitening around the wheel again. "I don't want to lose you," he said softly. The words hit me deep. That was my fear too. Our friendship was the foundation of my life. Admitting what I felt could either strengthen it or destroy it, and I wasn't sure which way it would go. We drove the rest of the way in silence, the kind of silence that wasn't empty but overflowing with unspoken words. When we finally got back to the city, he dropped me off at my apartment. I opened the door slowly, reluctant to leave. He stared ahead, his jaw still tight. "I'll see you later?" I asked cautiously. "Yeah," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. I stepped out, closing the door behind me, my heart heavy. As I climbed the stairs to my place, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fragile had cracked between us, and I had no idea if it could be repaired. That night, I lay in bed replaying everything. The question. My silence. My half-admission in the car. I wanted to call him to say more, but I couldn't find the courage. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I had already lost him. The following week was a blur. Ethan and I texted, but less than usual. Our conversations felt hollow, as if we were both dancing around the same truth. I missed him, missed the ease, the comfort, the way his presence had always steadied me. Finally, on Friday, he texted, "Want to grab a drink?" My heart raced. I typed back quickly, "Yeah, same place." That night, when I walked into the bar we'd gone to countless times before, I spotted him instantly. He looked the same as always, casual, confident, but his smile when he saw me was hesitant, uncertain. We sat at our usual booth, ordered beers, and tried small talk. But it was pointless. After a few minutes, he leaned closer, his eyes locked on mine. "I can't keep pretending," he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. My breath caught. "I meant what I asked," he continued. "And I don't regret it. Do you?" I stared at him, my pulse pounding in my ears. For once, I forced myself not to look away. "No," I whispered. "I don't regret it." His expression softened, but the intensity in his eyes only grew. "Then what are we going to do about it?" The question hung between us, heavy and electrifying. For the first time, I didn't feel like running from it. But before I could answer, the waitress arrived with our drinks, breaking the moment. Ethan leaned back, his lips curling into the faintest of smiles, as if he knew this conversation was far from over. And in that instant, I realized this wasn't just about admitting feelings anymore. This was about deciding whether to risk everything we had for the possibility of something more. Something neither of us could deny any longer. The days after that night at the bar were a whirlwind of confusion and anticipation. Ethan's question, "What are we going to do about it?" echoed in my head like a song stuck on repeat. Every time I tried to focus on work, on errands, on the mundane details of daily life, it crept back in. I could still see the intensity in his eyes, hear the certainty in his voice. For years, Ethan had been my anchor, my best friend, the one person who saw through my walls, who knew my flaws and stayed anyway. And now there was this undeniable pull between us, something that had always lingered in the background but suddenly demanded to be faced. We didn't talk for a few days after the bar, not out of avoidance but because we both seemed to need space to process. The silence wasn't empty, though, it was thick with unspoken words. When my phone finally buzzed with his name, my heart skipped. "Come over tonight?" I stared at the message for a long time, nerves twisting my stomach. I typed back, "Yeah." When I arrived at his apartment, he was already waiting by the door. His hair was a little messy, like he had been pacing, and he wore a plain gray t-shirt that somehow made him look more effortless than anyone had a right to be. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Hey," I replied, stepping inside. The air felt different, charged. The easy banter we once had was gone, replaced with something heavier. He handed me a beer, and we sat on the couch, the distance between us more noticeable than ever. After a few sips, he set his drink down and leaned forward. "I don't want to keep skirting around this. I know we're both scared, but I can't keep pretending it's not there." My throat tightened. "Neither can I." He searched my face, his eyes steady, unwavering. "So tell me, when you think about us, what do you see?" I froze, the question slicing through my defenses. For so long, I had buried my feelings under friendship, convincing myself that what I wanted was impossible. But now, with him looking at me like that, I couldn't hide. "I see," my voice trembled. "I see nights like the one at the campsite. I see the way I've always felt safer with you than with anyone else. I see something that scares the hell out of me, but also something I don't want to lose." Ethan's jaw tightened, but his eyes softened. He reached out, his hand brushing mine on the couch. The touch was light, tentative, but it sent a jolt through me. "I've wanted this for longer than I'd admit," he said quietly. "I just didn't know if you felt the same. And if you didn't, I couldn't bear the thought of ruining what we have." His honesty hit me hard. My chest ached with the weight of everything unsaid. "Ethan, you're the most important person in my life. Losing you is my biggest fear." But lying to myself, pretending I don't feel this, might be worse. The silence between us deepened, but it wasn't empty. His hand slid fully into mine, fingers intertwining. It felt natural, almost inevitable, like this was where we had been heading all along. But just as the moment seemed to crystallize into something undeniable, a sharp knock at the door shattered it. We both jumped, pulling apart instinctively, as if caught in something forbidden. Ethan frowned, standing to answer it. When he opened the door, a neighbor stood there, looking frazzled. "Hey, sorry to bother you. There's been a car accident at the corner. A couple of us are calling 911, but we need some help moving one of the cars. It's blocking traffic." Without hesitation, Ethan nodded. "I'll be there in a second." He turned back to me, and for a moment, I saw the conflict in his eyes, the pull between staying with me and rushing to help. But of course, Ethan being who he was, he didn't hesitate. "I'll be right back." I nodded, my heart pounding. "Go." As he left, I sat there on the couch, staring at the space where he had just been. The interruption was like a cruel joke from the universe, forcing us back into uncertainty. But it also made something clear. Life wasn't going to pause for us. If we wanted this, if we truly wanted each other, we would have to fight through distractions, fears, and obstacles. When he returned 15 minutes later, a little out of breath and smelling faintly of the night air, he looked at me with a kind of urgency I hadn't seen before. "Sorry about that," he said, sitting back down. His hand found mine again without hesitation this time. "But you see? That's life. It's messy. It gets in the way. If we keep waiting for the perfect moment, it's never going to come." I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. He was right. "So," he said, his voice steady, "are we going to keep running from this, or are we finally going to face it?" The weight of the question pressed down on me. The noise of the world outside faded. It was just him, his eyes locked on mine, his hand warm in my own. My pulse raced, fear and longing battling inside me. And then, without thinking, I leaned closer. The space between us narrowed, our breaths mingling. His hand moved to the back of my neck, steadying me, pulling me in. And just before our lips met, I whispered the words that had been burning inside me for months. "I don't want to run anymore." Our mouths finally collided, and the world tilted on its axis. The kiss was fierce, desperate, years of tension and longing pouring out in one electric moment. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, his forehead rested against mine. "Then it's settled," he whispered. But even as I felt his words sink into me, a flood of questions rushed in. What did this mean for us? For our future? For everything we had built? The answers weren't clear. But for the first time, I knew one thing for certain. The story of us had only just begun. The days after that kiss felt surreal, like I was walking on unsteady ground. Every glance, every touch with Ethan carried a weight it hadn't before. We didn't define anything, and maybe that was why it felt so fragile. A single wrong move could send it all crashing down. The morning after, I woke up in his apartment. He was in the kitchen, shirtless, making coffee like it was the most normal thing in the world. But it wasn't normal. At least not to me. My eyes kept drifting over the lines of his back, the way his shoulders moved as he reached for the mugs. "You're staring," he said without turning around. His voice was teasing, but it held an edge, like he wanted to know if I'd admit it. "Maybe I am," I answered, my throat dry. He turned then, smirking as he set the mugs on the counter. For a moment, it felt easy, almost like we had always been this way. But then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and the color drained from his face. "What is it?" I asked. "It's work," he said, running a hand through his hair. "They need me." Ethan was a firefighter. I'd always admired the way he threw himself into danger for others, but now, with my feelings out in the open, the thought of him rushing into flames or collapsing buildings hit me differently. "You have to go?" He nodded, already pulling on his uniform jacket. "There's been an accident. A warehouse fire on the south side." The kiss we had shared the night before seemed to fade under the weight of reality. He leaned down, pressing a quick kiss to my forehead, and then he was gone. I sat in his empty kitchen, the silence pressing in. My chest ached with worry, a fear I hadn't let myself feel before. Being close to Ethan meant more than stolen glances and hidden touches. It meant the risk of losing him. Hours passed with no word. I tried distracting myself, flipping through channels, scrolling on my phone, but every siren outside made my stomach twist. Finally, his name lit up my screen. I'm okay. Heading back. Relief flooded me, but it was quickly followed by anger I didn't expect. When he walked back into the apartment, covered in soot and exhaustion, I wanted to hug him and yell at him all at once. You could have called sooner, I said, my voice sharp. He looked at me, surprised. I couldn't. We were in the middle of it. People needed help. I know, I admitted, my voice cracking. I didn't realize how much it would kill me not knowing if you were okay. Something shifted in his eyes. He dropped his gear bag and crossed the room, pulling me into his arms. He smelled of smoke and sweat, but I didn't care. This is the life I chose, he said quietly. And if you're going to be in it, you have to know there will always be this risk. His words hit me hard. Was I ready for that? To love someone whose life was constantly on the line? That night as he showered, I sat on his couch, replaying everything. The kiss, the fear, the uncertainty. When he came out, hair damp, wearing a plain t-shirt, he sat beside me. Talk to me, he said. I don't know if I can handle this, I confessed. Every time you leave, I'll wonder if you're coming back. Ethan reached for my hand, his grip firm. I can't promise you safety, but I can promise you honesty. No games. No hiding how I feel. His voice softened. Last night wasn't a mistake. I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. Neither do I. We sat there in silence, our hands linked, the fire between us undeniable yet surrounded by shadows of doubt. Then came the knock on the door. Again, life intruding at the worst possible moment. This time, it was his captain, standing there with a stern expression. Sorry to barge in, but we need to talk. Ethan glanced at me before stepping into the hallway. I strained to hear, catching fragments, short-staffed, another call, you're our best. When he came back, his expression was grim. They need me again. Tonight. My heart sank. You just got back. I know, he said, his voice heavy. But they don't have enough men. If I don't go, someone else will have to, and it might cost lives. The choice was never really a choice for Ethan. Duty always came first. And I loved him for that, but it also terrified me. As he gathered his things, he looked at me, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath. When I get back, we finish this conversation. No more running, no more holding back. And then he was gone again, swallowed by the night. I sat alone in his apartment, the echo of his words hanging in the air. We finished this conversation. But what if he didn't come back? The thought clawed at me, suffocating. I realized then that my heart was already too deep in this. Loving Ethan meant living with the fear of loss, the uncertainty of tomorrow. The hours dragged, every tick of the clock louder than the last. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m. I sat on the couch, staring at the door, waiting for it to open. And finally, it did. Ethan stepped inside, weary but alive. The sight of him nearly broke me. I rushed to him, wrapping my arms around him before he could even speak. His chest rose and fell against me, his heartbeat strong under my ear. He whispered, I told you I'd come back. But I knew there would always be another call, another risk, another night spent waiting and wondering. And yet, as I held him, I realized something else too. I would rather face the fear of losing him than live my life without him. Still, the question lingered, sharp and unrelenting. Was I truly ready for everything that came with loving a man like Ethan? The answer would come sooner than I expected. The night Ethan returned from that second call, something in his eyes had changed. He sat on the couch across from me, shoulders slumped, his uniform still stained with soot and ash. His silence spoke louder than any words could. What happened? I asked softly, my chest tightening. He rubbed his face with both hands, then let out a long, unsteady breath. We lost someone tonight. His voice cracked. Not one of ours, a man trapped inside. I tried, but the flames, he trailed off, his jaw tight. I moved closer, laying a hand on his knee. His eyes met mine, filled with guilt and exhaustion. For once, the strong, fearless Ethan I admired looked breakable. You did everything you could, I whispered. You always do. But it wasn't enough. His hands trembled slightly. What if it's me next time? What if one day I don't come back through that door? The words cut deep. That fear had haunted me all day, and hearing him give it a voice made it real. My throat closed, but I forced myself to hold his gaze. Then let's not waste the time we do have pretending we're something we're not. He blinked at me, his expression raw. You mean? I'm done running from this. From us. Last night, that kiss, it wasn't just a moment. It was the truth I've been too scared to admit. His hand reached for mine, clutching it tightly. You think I haven't been terrified too? Every time I looked at you, I wanted more. But I thought maybe it was safer to keep it hidden. Safer for you. Safer for me. Safe isn't living, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us pulsed with everything we hadn't said for months, maybe years. Then Ethan leaned forward, pressing his forehead to mine. His breath was uneven, but his voice was steady. I don't care about safe anymore. I care about you. I closed my eyes, letting the weight of his words sink in. And when his lips found mine again, this time there was no hesitation, no fear. Just fire, real and consuming, but different from the flames he battled at work. This one was ours. We broke apart only when our lungs demanded it, both of us gasping, both of us smiling through the tears in our eyes. I'm not naive, I said quietly. I know there will be nights like this again. Times when I'll be terrified. But I'd rather face that with you than face a life without you. He cupped my face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away the moisture on my cheeks. You don't know how much I needed to hear that. The night stretched on, but neither of us felt tired. We talked until dawn crept through the blinds, about the risks, the fears, the possibility of heartbreak, but also about hope, about wanting to build something real. When the first rays of sunlight touched his living room, Ethan turned to me with a half smile. So what does this mean? Are we? I didn't let him finish. We're whatever we decide to be. But right now, I want us to stop pretending. He exhaled, relief washing over his features. Then we'll take it one day at a time. No promises of forever, just promises of honesty. And somehow, that was enough. Later that morning, as we stood on his balcony, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up, I realized how much had shifted inside me. The fear hadn't disappeared, but it no longer controlled me. Loving Ethan meant embracing uncertainty, but it also meant embracing joy, passion, and a connection I'd never felt before. He slipped an arm around my waist, pulling me close. You're quiet, he said softly. I'm just thinking, I admitted, about how crazy it is that one night changed everything. Not just one night, he corrected, kissing the side of my head. It was always there. We just finally stopped ignoring it. I smiled, leaning into him. And in that moment, I knew, even if the future was uncertain, even if fear still lingered in the shadows, we had found something worth holding on to. Something worth fighting for. As the morning sun lit up his tired face, I whispered, "Don't ever doubt what you mean to me." He looked at me, eyes steady, and replied, "Then don't ever doubt that I'll always come back for you." And for the first time in a long while, I believed him. If you've ever loved someone whose life carries risks, you know the fear and the courage it demands. This story isn't just about two men finding love, it's about choosing to live fully even when tomorrow isn't promised. What about you? Would you rather guard your heart to feel safe, or risk it all for something real? If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that love, in all its forms, is worth the leap.